It's Sunday afternoon. You've finally cleared your schedule. The dishes are done, the work is paused, the world has briefly stopped demanding things from you. You lie down on your bed with the explicit intention of resting. You've earned this. You need this. Your body has been screaming for this, so you close your eyes, you soften your shoulders, you tell yourself to just let go. And that's when your heart starts racing. Not gradually, not subtly. Within seconds of attempting to rest, your pulse quickens, your jaw clenches. A creeping sensation of panic begins building in your chest, not despite the fact that you're trying to relax, but because of it. The harder you command your body to calm down, the louder the alarm bells ring. Your mind floods with intrusive thoughts, tasks you forgot, conversations you need to replay, vague catastrophes that might happen if you're not paying attention. Your muscles refuse to soften. The stillness feels like drowning. Finally, you give up, reach for your phone, and the moment you do, the moment you return to some form of activity, even mindless scrolling, you feel a strange, shameful relief. You can breathe again. As long as you're not trying to rest, this moment is happening in countless bodies right now, and it reveals one of the most misunderstood phenomena in psychology. There are nervous systems that experience relaxation not as safety, but as threat. For millions of people, the act of attempting to calm down triggers the exact opposite response. Their bodies don't resist rest because they're stubborn or broken. They resist it because, somewhere deep in their survival wiring, stillness became synonymous with danger, vigilance became safety, and rest became the riskiest thing they could do. But why does the same nervous system that desperately needs rest actively sabotage every attempt to access it? Why does lying still feel more terrifying than exhaustion? And what happens to a body that can never truly land, that spends decades toggling between frantic activity and anxious attempts at calm, never actually experiencing either? In this video, we're exploring the paradox of relaxation-induced anxiety. We'll examine why certain nervous systems were wired to associate vigilance with survival and stillness with vulnerability. We'll uncover the neurobiological mechanism that transforms the attempt to relax into a threat response, making your own downtime feel like danger. We'll look at how this pattern forms in childhood, how it shows up in adult life, and why modern wellness culture often makes it worse instead of better. We'll explore the hidden cost of never resting, the specific ways this affects relationships and self-perception, and the profound difference between passive rest and safe nervous system regulation. And finally, we'll discuss not how to force yourself to relax, but how to teach a hypervigilant body that calm doesn't mean unprotected. If you've ever felt your anxiety spike the moment you tried to rest, if you dread weekends more than work days, if stillness feels like punishment and you've been told you just need to learn to chill, this is the explanation you've been searching for. This is the psychology of the paradox. Let's begin. This isn't a recent development. You didn't wake up one day and suddenly become unable to relax. This pattern has roots that go back further than you probably realize. So far back that you might not remember a time when stillness felt safe. What looks like a sudden inability to rest is actually the culmination of thousands of small adaptations, layered over years, building a nervous system architecture that treats vigilance as the default setting and calm as a dangerous deviation. Your autonomic nervous system, the part of you that operates below conscious thought, managing heart rate, breathing, digestion, stress response, develops its baseline in childhood. It learns what safe feels like by experiencing safety. It learns what dangerous feels like by experiencing threat. But here's the crucial part. It doesn't just respond to obvious dangers like physical harm. It responds to the emotional climate of your environment, to unpredictability, to the subtle tension in a room, to the need to monitor constantly because the adults around you couldn't be trusted to stay stable. For children who grew up in environments where they needed to track variables constantly, where a parent's mood could shift without warning, where tension could erupt into conflict at any moment, where love felt conditional on perfect behavior, where chaos was more common than calm, the nervous system makes a logical adaptation. It stays alert. It scans for danger signals. It learns to detect micro changes in tone, body language, energy. This isn't pathology. This is survival intelligence. The child who could predict when an adult was about to become volatile, who could read the room and adjust their behavior accordingly, who could stay vigilant enough to avoid becoming a target. That child was safer than the child who couldn't. The cost was that vigilance became their permanent state. The nervous system, shaped by necessity, learned an equation that would follow them into adulthood. Activation equals control. Control equals survival. And rest equals risk. Their body internalized a devastating truth, that the moment they stopped watching, something bad would happen. Not might, would happen. Because in their formative years, it often did. This is where the wiring solidifies, not as conscious choice, but as autonomic pattern. The nervous system doesn't just remember this lesson intellectually, it encodes it into its operating system, into the subconscious threat detection mechanisms that run constantly beneath awareness. Decades later, even in objectively safe circumstances, even surrounded by stability, that same nervous system will sound alarms the moment vigilance drops. Because to that ancient survival system, dropping vigilance isn't rest. It's negligence. From the outside, hypervigilance looks like anxiety, overthinking, being too sensitive or unable to let things go. But from the inside, it's something entirely different. It's a highly sophisticated protection system that never received the update that the war is over. Your nervous system doesn't distinguish between past and present threat the way your conscious mind does. It operates on pattern recognition. If stillness once meant you missed important danger cues, stillness now triggers the same alarm, even if the danger no longer exists. If rest once meant you became a target or got hurt because you weren't paying attention, rest now feels like leaving the door unlocked in a dangerous neighborhood. Your body isn't being irrational. It's being loyal to the lessons that once kept you alive. This is what researchers call neuroception, the subconscious detection of safety or threat. It happens before thought, before conscious awareness, in the most ancient parts of your brain. You can intellectually know you're safe. You can be lying in your own bed, in your own home, with the door locked and nothing objectively wrong. And your body can still be screaming that something is very wrong. Because neuroception doesn't care about logic, it cares about pattern. And if the pattern says stillness precedes danger, then stillness will always feel dangerous. What your body learned about safety is this: safety isn't calm. Safety is readiness. Safety is the ability to detect threat before it arrives, to stay one step ahead of chaos, to never be caught off guard. Your nervous system became a 24-hour monitoring service, and it genuinely believed, and in many cases was correct, that this constant vigilance was what kept you from harm. The problem is that once this pattern is established, your body doesn't naturally unlearn it just because the circumstances change. It needs something more than logic to update. It needs new experience, repeated thousands of times, proving that rest doesn't lead to disaster. Here's what's actually happening in your nervous system when you try to relax and your anxiety spikes instead. Your autonomic nervous system has two primary branches: sympathetic, which activates stress responses, and parasympathetic, which promotes rest and recovery. In a flexible, well-regulated nervous system, you move between these states fluidly, depending on context, activating when needed, resting when safe. But in a chronically hypervigilant nervous system, the sympathetic branch has been in the driver's seat for so long that it's become the default. Your baseline is activation. Your body has adapted to running on stress hormones, cortisol, adrenaline, as if they were regular fuel rather than emergency reserves. This state, while exhausting, has become familiar. Your nervous system knows how to operate here. It's mapped every possible threat, developed responses for every contingency, maintained control through constant monitoring. Now you try to relax. You consciously attempt to shift into parasympathetic mode, to activate what's called the ventral vagal state, the rest and digest response. And this is where the paradox occurs. Because to a nervous system that has equated vigilance with safety, this downshift doesn't register as intentional rest. It registers as a dangerous loss of control. Your sympathetic system interprets the drop in activation not as healing, but as failure, a critical lapse in the protection system. And it does what it's designed to do. It floods you with stress hormones to correct the problem, to bring you back to the activation level it considers safe. This is relaxation-induced anxiety. You're not imagining it. You're not resisting rest on purpose. Your body is genuinely perceiving the attempt to calm down as a threat, and it's mounting a threat response to pull you back to vigilance. The harder you try to force calm, the more your nervous system fights back, because from its perspective, you're trying to disable the very mechanism that has kept you alive. This explains the maddening experience of becoming more anxious the more you try to relax. It's like trying to fall asleep by commanding yourself to sleep. The effort itself becomes the obstacle. Your conscious mind wants rest. Your nervous system wants safety. And tragically, it has learned that these two things are incompatible. Let's describe what this actually feels like, because if you live with this pattern, these sensations intimately, but you might never have heard them named, never realized that millions of other people experience the exact same thing. You lie down to rest. Within moments, you become hyper-aware of your own heartbeat, not in a peaceful, meditative way, in a way that makes you convinced something is medically wrong. Your heart is beating too fast, or with an irregular rhythm, or so loudly you can hear it in your ears. The stillness amplifies every internal sensation until your own body feels like a threat. You try to breathe slowly, and suddenly you can't remember how to breathe naturally. Each breath becomes manual, deliberate, wrong somehow. Your mind, which seemed relatively quiet while you were busy, suddenly floods with intrusive thoughts. Every conversation you need to have, every mistake you've ever made, every possible future catastrophe. It's as if your mind has been storing these thoughts, waiting for the moment you stop moving to attack you with them all at once. The stillness you sought becomes a screen onto which your anxiety projects its entire inventory of worries. Your body won't be still. Your legs feel restless. Your hands need to fidget. Lying down starts to feel like restraint rather than rest, like you're being held in place against your will. You shift positions constantly, searching for some configuration that might feel comfortable, but comfort remains just out of reach. The longer you lie there trying to relax, the more trapped you feel. The more trapped you feel, the more your nervous system escalates its alarm. Eventually, the need to move becomes overwhelming. You get up, find something to do, and immediately, shamefully feel better. Not rested, just less panicked. This is the daily reality of a nervous system that can't distinguish rest from risk. And what makes it worse is the self-judgment that layers on top. Why can't I do something as simple as lying down? Why can't I just relax like normal people? You watch others nap on airplanes, sprawl on couches on Sunday afternoons, take vacations where they actually seem to unwind, and you wonder what's wrong with you, that the most natural human need, rest, has become the thing you're worst at. The body was not designed to operate in constant activation. The stress response, that flood of adrenaline and cortisol, the heightened alertness, the muscle tension, the racing heart, exists for acute threats. It's meant to mobilize you briefly, then release. But when that response becomes chronic, When your system never fully powers down, the cost accumulates in ways that are both invisible and profound. Chronic hypervigilance depletes your physical reserves systematically. Your immune system weakens because stress hormones suppress immune function. Your digestion suffers because your body diverts resources away from non-essential processes, like breaking down food when it thinks you're in danger. Your sleep becomes fragmented and unrestorative because your nervous system won't allow the deep rest cycles necessary for cellular repair. You develop tension headaches, jaw pain from constant clenching, back pain from muscles that never soften. You're exhausted, but the exhaustion doesn't lead to rest. It leads to more activation, more vigilance, because now you're also worried about why you're so tired all the time. Cognitively, the cost is equally steep. Constant hypervigilance consumes enormous mental bandwidth. You're always running multiple background processes, monitoring the environment, analyzing social cues, preparing for potential problems, replaying interactions to check for threats you might have missed. This leaves fewer resources for presence, for creativity, for actually experiencing your life rather than constantly assessing it. You develop what feels like attention problems, difficulty focusing, mind always wandering. But it's not that you can't pay attention, it's that your attention is already fully occupied with threat detection, leaving nothing left for anything else. Emotionally, never resting creates a specific kind of numbness. You're never fully engaged with joy because you can't let your guard down enough to feel it completely. You're never fully present with other people because part of you is always monitoring, assessing, staying ready. Even moments that should be peaceful, time with loved ones, beautiful experiences, accomplishments, carry an undercurrent of tension. You can't fully land in them. You're there, but you're also watching yourself being there, scanning for what could go wrong, preparing for the moment it all falls apart. And perhaps most devastating, you lose trust in your own body. The very system that's supposed to help you feel safe becomes the thing you're most afraid of. You start to dread your own nervous system's responses, anticipating the panic that will arrive if you try to rest. Your body becomes the enemy rather than home. This pattern doesn't stay contained within your individual experience. It shapes every relationship, every attempt at intimacy, every moment of trying to connect with another person. Because hypervigilance doesn't turn off when you're with people you love. Sometimes it intensifies. In relationships, you're the one who can't fully relax even during vacation. Your partner wants to lie on the beach doing nothing, and you need an activity, a plan, something to organize. They think you're controlling or can't enjoy yourself. You think they don't understand that someone has to stay alert, that good things don't last unless you're vigilant about protecting them. Neither of you realizes you're speaking different nervous system languages. You struggle with the kind of intimacy that requires letting someone see you at rest, vulnerable, undefended. Sex can be difficult, not because of desire, but because it requires a level of presence and letting go that your system won't allow. Even cuddling on the couch demands a surrender that feels dangerous. You're physically there, but your mind is elsewhere, monitoring. Your partner might say you seem distant, and you are, not because you don't love them, but because your nervous system has learned that being fully present with another person without vigilance is when you get hurt. Attachment theory offers language for this pattern. If you developed what's called anxious or disorganized attachment, where your early caregivers were inconsistently available or emotionally volatile, you learned that your own needs were dangerous, that rest made you a burden, that you had to stay useful and alert to maintain connection. You carried this into adult relationships. You became the person who always monitors the other's emotional state, who can't ask for what you need, who feels safest when you're taking care of others because caregiving gives you a role, a purpose, a reason to stay activated and therefore not vulnerable. The tragedy is that the very vigilance you believe protects your relationships often damages them. Your partner can't reach you. Your friends notice you never truly relax around them. Your children sense your tension. The hypervigilance that once kept you safe in an unpredictable environment now keeps you isolated in a stable one. There's a specific exhaustion that comes from living inside a mind that never stops tracking. From the moment you wake, a scanning process begins. Your internal system checks. How do I feel? What's my anxiety level today? Did I sleep? What's on the schedule? What could go wrong? This isn't conscious worry. It's deeper. An automatic assessment protocol that runs before you're even fully awake. As you move through the day, this scanning continues at every level. In conversations, you're not just listening to words. You're reading tone, facial expressions, body language, the space between sentences. You're running real-time analyses. Are they upset with me? Did that comment mean something? Should I have said that differently? Your mind maintains multiple simultaneous threads. What's actually happening and what might be happening beneath the surface. This is what psychologists call hypervigilance, but what it feels like is being a surveillance system that can never clock out. Your body is doing the same work. You're constantly aware of internal sensations in a way that others aren't. Your heart rate, your breathing, the tension in your shoulders, the slight nausea in your stomach. You register all of it, all the time. This is called heightened interoception, the awareness of internal bodily states. For some people, this awareness is subtle background noise. For you, it's a constant data stream that your mind feels compelled to interpret. Is this sensation anxiety, illness, evidence that something is wrong? The monitoring never stops, and every sensation becomes potential evidence of threat. Even metacognition, your awareness of your own thoughts, becomes another surveillance layer. You watch yourself think, you analyze your reactions. Why did I feel that? What does it mean that I'm anxious about this? Am I overreacting? Should I be more worried, less worried? You develop anxiety about your anxiety and about your exhaustion. Your mind turns inward to monitor itself, creating recursive loops where the watching becomes another thing to watch. The cruelest part is that this constant monitoring masquerades as control. It feels productive. It convinces you that staying alert is what prevents disaster. But the truth is darker. The monitoring itself has become the disaster. The vigilance you maintain to protect yourself from overwhelm is what's creating it. You're not observing your life. You're living at one remove from it, watching it through a security camera, narrating it in real time, never actually inhabiting it. And here's where it gets worse. Modern wellness culture, with all its emphasis on self-care and mindfulness, has created an additional layer of shame and confusion for people whose nervous systems respond to these practices with panic rather than peace. Everywhere you turn, someone is telling you the solution is simple. Just meditate, just practice yoga, just take a bath, light a candle, do some deep breathing, as if relaxation were a matter of correct technique or sufficient commitment. As if your inability to access calm is a personal failing rather than a nervous system pattern developed over years of necessary adaptation. You try meditation. You sit down, close your eyes, attempt to focus on your breath, and within minutes, your anxiety spikes. Your mind floods with thoughts. Your body screams at you to move. You feel worse than when you started. The meditation app tells you to simply observe your thoughts without judgment. But your thoughts are observing you, and they are very much full of judgment. You conclude you're doing it wrong, that you're even failing at the thing that's supposed to fix your failure to relax. Yoga class becomes another source of stress. Shavasana, the final resting pose, considered the most important part of the practice, is your personal nightmare. You lie there while everyone else seems to melt into peaceful surrender, and your heart pounds. You watch the clock. You plan your escape. You leave feeling more activated than when you arrived, and also feeling like you're broken in some fundamental way, because even lying still on a mat is something you can't do correctly. The cultural narrative around stress has become, you're experiencing it because you're not managing it properly. If you just tried harder, practiced more consistently, committed to the right routine, you'd be fine. This narrative ignores the reality that for some nervous systems, the practice is meant to reduce stress, trigger it. The mandate to relax becomes another form of pressure, another way you're failing, another thing to feel anxious about. There's a particular violence in being told you just need to relax, when relaxation itself is the trigger. It's like telling someone with a broken leg to just walk normally. The instruction doesn't just fail to help, it adds shame to suffering. It suggests that your struggle is evidence of moral or personal inadequacy rather than a complex neurobiological pattern with legitimate developmental origins. You start to believe there's something uniquely wrong with you, that everyone else has access to some kind of peace that you're constitutionally unable to reach. So here is the reframe that changes everything. This is not a relaxation problem. This is a safety problem. You don't have a deficient ability to rest. You have a nervous system that has learned a different definition of what safety actually means. And in that definition, stillness without vigilance doesn't exist. Your body isn't broken or resistant or self-sabotaging. It's operating exactly as it was trained to operate. The hypervigilance that makes rest impossible is the same hypervigilance that once kept you safe, that helped you navigate an environment where constant monitoring was necessary for survival. When you understand this, truly understand it, not just intellectually but in your body, something shifts. The shame lessens, because you're not failing at something simple that everyone else can do. You're carrying an adaptation that made sense, that was intelligent, that served a purpose. Your nervous system isn't malfunctioning. It's functioning exactly as it was designed to function, given the data it received about how the world works. The problem isn't that you can't relax. The problem is that your nervous system has different safety criteria than someone who grew up in a more stable environment. For them, safety might mean nothing is actively threatening me right now. For you, safety means I'm alert enough to detect and respond to threat before it becomes active. These are fundamentally different operating systems. Neither is wrong, but one makes rest accessible and the other doesn't. This distinction matters enormously because it changes what healing looks like. If this is a relaxation problem, the solution is learning better relaxation techniques, trying harder, practicing more, getting better at something you're bad at. But if this is a safety problem, the solution is completely different. It's about updating your nervous system's threat detection algorithms. It's about providing experiences, repeated, consistent experiences that begin to teach your body that rest doesn't lead to disaster, that you can let your guard down slightly and survive, that calm doesn't mean unprotected. You don't need to force yourself to relax. You need to help your nervous system learn a new equation, that vigilance and rest aren't mutually exclusive, that you can be both relaxed and safely observant, that calm doesn't require the complete abandonment of awareness. This isn't about becoming a different person. It's about giving your nervous system new data, slowly and patiently, until it begins to believe that the war is over. So, how do you actually work with a nervous system that treats rest as threat? Not by forcing it, not by following one-size-fits-all wellness prescriptions, but by honoring how your system actually works and meeting it where it is. First principle, titration. This term comes from chemistry, adding a substance drop by drop until you reach the desired reaction. Applied to nervous system regulation, it means approaching rest in doses so small that your system doesn't register threat. Instead of attempting 30 minutes of meditation, try 30 seconds of stillness. Instead of a full day off, try 15 minutes of genuinely unscheduled time. The goal is to build tolerance gradually, like physical therapy for an injured muscle. You're teaching your nervous system that brief moments of reduced vigilance don't lead to disaster. Each successful microdose of rest provides counter-evidence to the belief that stillness equals danger. Over time, with hundreds or thousands of these small experiences, your window of tolerance expands, but you can't rush this. Forcing yourself into more rest than your system can handle will only reinforce the original fear. Second principle, active downregulation. There's a profound difference between passive rest and active discharge of the nervous system energy. Some people need to move before they can be still. This isn't restlessness or resistance. It's completing the stress cycle. Your body has been in activation, mobilized for threat, flooded with energy meant for action. If you try to rest while all that energy is still trapped in your system, you'll feel like you're restraining a wild animal. Walking, gentle stretching, shaking, even simple tasks with your hands can help discharge that activation, allowing your nervous system to downregulate naturally rather than being forced into stillness. For many hypervigilant people, a walk is more restorative than lying down precisely because it honors the system's need to move before it can land. Third principle, co-regulation. Your nervous system didn't learn hypervigilance in isolation, and it often can't unlearn it in isolation either. Co-regulation is the phenomenon where one nervous system helps regulate another through proximity and safety cues. Being near a genuinely calm person, not someone pretending to be calm, but someone whose nervous system is actually in ventral vagal state, can help your system experience what that state feels like. This is why some people can only rest when they're with specific safe others, why a partner's presence might make sleep possible when solo sleep isn't, why therapy with the right therapist can create a physical sense of calm that nothing else does. You're essentially borrowing someone else's regulated nervous system as a model, allowing your system to practice matching their rhythm. This is biological, not psychological. Your nervous systems are communicating beneath the level of words. Fourth principle, acknowledging the vigilance. The hypervigilance that exhausts you also kept you alive. Before you try to change it, honor it. Thank it. Your nervous system developed this pattern because it worked, because it protected you when protection was necessary. There's grief in letting go of a survival strategy, even one that no longer serves you. Allow space for that. When you catch yourself unable to relax, instead of frustration, try, "Thank you for trying to keep me safe. I understand why you're doing this. We're actually okay right now." This isn't affirmation nonsense. It's working with your system as an ally rather than an enemy. Paradoxically, the more you accept and appreciate your hypervigilance, the less desperately it needs to prove its necessity. We started with a specific moment, lying in bed on a Sunday afternoon, trying to rest, and feeling your anxiety climb instead of fall. That moment that seemed like personal failure, like something uniquely wrong with you, now you can see it differently. Not as malfunction, but as the logical output of a nervous system shaped by experiences that taught it vigilance was survival. From that moment to here, through the neurobiological paradox that makes relaxation trigger threat response, through the childhood origins where hypervigilance became synonymous with safety, through the daily cost of constant monitoring and the relationship patterns it creates, through the cultural shame that layers onto an already difficult experience, through the reframe that changes everything, that this is a safety problem, not a relaxation problem. And finally, to principles that honor rather than override your nervous system's intelligence. This pattern is complex because nervous systems are complex, because survival learning runs deeper than conscious thought, because undoing years of adaptation cannot happen through willpower or weekend workshops. But here's what's also true. You are not broken. You're not failing at being human. You're carrying an adaptation that made sense, and you're doing the hard, patient work of updating it now that circumstances have changed. Healing doesn't mean becoming someone who can easily sprawl on a couch and do nothing for hours. It means developing a nervous system flexible enough to move between states without panic. It means learning that rest doesn't require the complete abandonment of awareness, that you can be both calm and safely observant, that peace doesn't mean unprotected. It means discovering what rest can actually look like for a nervous system that learned vigilance as a form of love. If this resonates with you, if you've spent years wondering why something as simple as relaxing feels impossible, I want you to know your experience is real, your struggle is valid, and you're not alone in this. The nervous system patterns we carry are not character flaws. They're evidence of how hard you've worked to stay safe in environments that required enormous energy to navigate. That same system that makes rest difficult also makes you capable of extraordinary awareness, depth of feeling, and attunement to others. These aren't separate traits. They're the same sensitivity working in different contexts. If you found something useful here, consider subscribing to this channel. We explore these hidden patterns of human psychology, the internal experiences most people carry but rarely hear described. And if you're willing, share in the comments. What does trying to relax actually feel like for you? Your words might be exactly what someone else needs to hear to realize they're not alone. Your story might be the light someone else has been searching for. You're allowed to rest imperfectly. You're allowed to need movement before stillness. You're allowed to work with your nervous system rather than against it. And you're allowed to take as long as you need to learn that calm doesn't mean giving up the vigilance that kept you safe. It means slowly, patiently, teaching your body that you can be both aware and at peace. The war is over. Your nervous system just needs time to believe it.